Ah, Stuart, welcome to Podcastina.
Thanks for having me, Galina. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. We're chuckling because you're the first one enduring, I think is the word.
I don't. I've worked on this kind of stuff before. I know the deal.
Yeah. My at-home podcast, my DIY studio.
Yeah, and we get to have Monty with us. It's pretty great. Oh, look at you. Look at you.
Yeah, so if you're watching this on the YouTube, it's the first time Monty is joining me for recording.
Stealing the show.
That's right. I think he's going to be a permanent fixture if the people like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like an animal that is this kind of round. I don't know about you. I love round animals, and I have a cat that is also round in the sort of like floofy way that Monty is. Excuse me. And there's what's nice is because there's some round animals that have a weight problem.
Yes.
And on every Instagram profile for these animals, the owner's like, Snacks is on a diet. Like they have to put it in the bio just to like, I don't know, like
they're trying to get ahead of the criticism that they know is coming.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm grateful that my cat does not have a weight problem, but just grows the hair out to look round. So I'm kind of, I guess, cleansed of that issue. Because I'm sure if you were to shave down Monty, quarter of the
size. He's a little bit of both. So the fur is definitely number one as far as his roundness. Mm-hmm. It's the number one causation, right? Mm-hmm. But he is a little bit overweight, but it's not due to any kind of overfeeding because he's been on a pretty strict diet. He doesn't get a lot of TRATS. Mm-hmm. But every time I take him to the vet, they comment on his weight. They tell me it's about 2 pounds more than it should be because they can't feel his ribs. And to that I say, this boy is like a linebacker, okay? It's not unhealthy weight. It's muscle. Yeah. And he's very like firm and tubular under this coat.
Yeah, he's doing crunches. And he just has a different kind of BMI. And also like in this industry, like we can't keep perpetuating this idea like I have to feel your ribs in order for you to be considered healthy. Like that sounds gross. and these vets need to be a little less superficial if we can be honest about that.
Otherwise, we're on our way to Ozempic for pets.
Right? Yeah. Excuse me.
It's a slippery slope.
What's on my hand? Am I just a big salt lick? That's what I assume I am. I assume I'm just like a pillar of salt for that dogs can look at.
Your pH balanced.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm a little acidic, and they love it.
You know, it's not me trying to pander to Pomeranian owners, but if that's what happens as a result of having him on the show, then so be it.
Yeah, if you can be their leader, I think that would be a good move.
I'll grift. Do you notice that people are getting accused of grifting so much these days? And I'm kind of unsure sometimes of the context.
Grifting how? Like, I know that people do grift. Mm-hmm. And are you asking about grifting in like a specific way?
Not specific. I just feel like I didn't used to hear the term so much, or maybe not, as it relates to comedy. And now I think with how things are politically, everyone's accusing every other person of grifting.
I think it's just the new in vogue term for it. I think we've had a bunch of different terms of it, like snake oil salesmen, liars, carnival owners. Like we've had a bunch of different ways of saying it, but America was founded on grifting. Like, America is where grifting goes to thrive. Like, this is like the NFL for lions.
It's true. It's so true.
If you go to another country, like all the people who stayed in, Europe and, and I'm sure, there are people there's liars everywhere, but I feel like, a lot of the people who stayed in the respective countries that people have immigrated from are reasonable people. They're like, yeah, why would I lie about that? It's like, that's why I stayed here in Germany or Turkey or wherever that people came from. And I think here, like, there's just so much there's so much opportunity to reinvent yourself, and I think that opens the door for lying about a product or yourself, or creating your own self mythology. And I think that, on top of just like the cultural uh, the cultural ethos around like working really hard, that sort of Protestant work ethic that came from some of the first white people that came here and stayed, and just the narcissism, that all kind of swirls around in this goop that is primed for lying.
And the American dream kind of encourages a level of that.
Yeah, because it's implying that you can do anything. And most people can't do anything.
Yeah. You can't tell them that.
Yeah, we can do some things, but it's I think it's more limited than people are willing to say it is. But there are times when someone kind of beats the odds, and it's really exciting, and it's a wholesome story, and I think those are the ones that people want these grifters to be. They want it to be this wholesome thing. Oh, this person came from nothing. It's like, did they? Probably not.
I think about that a lot, and I had a conversation with a friend who I grew up with the other day, and she's an immigrant like I am. And I kind of forgot that this particular scenario used to happen when we were kids. But I have I've heard it referred to as productivity dysmorphia a little bit, where I'm like, oh, I'm never working hard enough. I'm such a lazy piece of shit. I don't do enough. If I get 15 things done in a day, I'm upset that I didn't get 16 done, instead of just being stoked that I got 15 things done. But she reminded me that growing up, and both of us grew up only children, and we're both from these immigrant families who came here to chase the quote-unquote American dream, right? And she was like, do you remember our parents used to walk in on us doing nothing, and they would go, hey, why are you doing nothing? Shouldn't you be doing something?
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's because they would feel that there's limited time to become a success or something like that?
Yeah, and that there's this notion that relaxing is a bad thing, and that being tired is a bad thing, and somehow equates to laziness. And if you're not working 24/7, you're going to get beat out by the people who are.
Yeah. And some of that might be the result of, them just projecting their own feelings of insecurity onto their children, their relatives. But, I think, yeah, I mean, it's a lesson to just try to be kind to oneself, because in our industry with comedy, there's so many opportunities to keep working hard at something and keep pushing for things, because there's so many different routes that people can take with comedy. Because people that I started with in comedy, not all of them are still doing stand-up. Some of them are still being funny or being entertaining. They're just doing it in a different way. They're either writers, they're directors, they're producers, they're color commentary people for they're just solo. They're just doing podcasting, and some of them are just the funniest person in some other field, and that's what makes them distinct. So, comedy is great at a kind of it's like a crossroads of a bunch of different career paths, but it can feel like, oh, I have to pursue all of these, otherwise I'm not enough.
Do you try to pursue multiple ones, or have you figured out in your course of things what to actually laser focus on?
I think I have to want to pursue the thing. I have different ideas of ways that my career can go, and there's some of them where it would be like, this would work on the contingent that I was already a known quantity, or a more known quantity than I already am. And some of them are, I feel like the core is still stand up right now, where it's like I still have stories that I want to tell that center around my experience and can be delivered in a way that I am the solo person in a live stage setting. If that changed, whereas no, the stories I want to tell require me to be more collaborative, it requires more of a team effort, or this is a better movie idea, or this is a better TV show idea, I will try to pursue those, as I get the resources to make the things that I want to make. But right now, I feel like stand-up's still the core of it. And but it is hard, during the pandemic, I really had to think about how, like, honestly, like, how much of me is comedian? Because I used to think I am comedian who is named Stuart.
Yeah.
And I had to switch it. I am Stuart, one of the things I do is comedy. I do these other things. I'm of service to people in other ways. But comedy is not the foundation. The foundation is my identity. So I had to switch the identity stuff around. And that I think that helped me have a little more loving detachment from sort of the rigmarole of comedy and the hustle and bustle of it. Because I have too many responsibilities now for me to be like going out every single night. So I'm a little more, I don't want to say tactical, but I'm more, there's fewer opportunities to go out and just go hang, because I have responsibilities at home. I have work things I want to do. I also just want to like be better to my body.
Yeah.
So if I'm gonna be nicer to my body, like sometimes staying out till 2 a.m. after working a full day I know it's gonna kind of ruin me for a few days.
It will.
So I'm trying to recognize that there's sort of a marathon element to comedy.
I like the way that you put it it's about what story you want to tell versus necessarily maybe like what your ego wants.
Yeah, I mean, I also know like the type of comedy that I want to do specifically, and it is working small. It is like working small to mid-sized theaters around the country. Like, it's fun to perform for an audience that's like more than 1,500 people, and I've had the opportunity to do that before, and I'm sure the money's great. And I'm sure the stadiums are fun to do if you have that kind of temperament. But like, I also want to feel connected to the audience, and I don't see it as dimming my light to like have like a certain echelon of performance level to be not like the absolute highest. Like, I'm performing on the moon. Like that doesn't interest me. It's not. I don't think I have a temperament that is for that right now. Like, if I could be able to tell these long form storytelling and joke telling in front of like anywhere from 200 to 1,200 people, I think that would be a lovely life.
That would be a lovely life, and that's kind of what you get used to as you're coming up, and it feels. Yeah, like just more intimate, but in a way of you're connecting, so you can actually get like a real read on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
With our industry being how it is, and just anyone in like a creative entrepreneurial field, what do you do to stay on top of task management and time management? Because we are kind of, we're not under the thumb of a boss and really strict scheduling and stuff. Like, being your own boss kind of sucks. So how do you figure out like, when have I worked enough? When have I done enough? When have I not? When should I be like a little bit harder on myself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I will say I'm a pretty lenient boss lately, and I have been the person who runs around like a chicken with my head cut off, because I used to kind of operate with the energy, and I'm sure it read on me, like out my pores for a while, like a desperate energy of like I thought I was gonna be like live like Mozart and be dead by 35.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be 35 in like a couple months, so like unless we have a really big surprise coming, it's not gonna go that way. So I think I do need to be more diligent on the stand-up front. I think a lot of life stuff has been happening in my life in the last year or two, Basically, I was working very hard towards the goal of shooting my own special, which I did in November of 2023, and it was a lot of work. I was crowdfunding for the special. I was trying to let everyone I knew in the Bay Area where the shows were going to be taped to come see it, and dealing with a comedy club myself and working with my director and producer, and everyone was super helpful, and everyone came around to be very supportive. So I don't have any complaints in that part, but I feel like there was a certain level of exhaustion that I experienced from that, compounded with like a month after that, I moved in with my girlfriend, so we started like building our life together, and the we've been kind of on this path to try to have a child, and now she's pregnant.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and this has been the thing that's on my mind since like October of 2023, when we really started like making efforts to get her body ready and my body ready to have this kid. And so
your body ready.
I mean,
no,
the
it's
amount,
true.
yeah, no, the amount of ready my body had to be was pretty minimal.
Are you trying to have sympathy dad bod ahead of time, or like sympathy pregnancy? What do they call it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it. I've just heard that
you get like phantom pregnancy pains as the dad,
or you just you
get fat alongside her.
Yeah, there is a thing where it's like there is a gaining of weight too,
mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it is out of sympathy or if it's just out of like exasperation.
Uh-huh.
I am. We're both trying to be as like healthy as we can and try to keep moving. And I know just movement is what's going to keep all of us alive.
Mm-hmm.
It's what kept my grandparents alive as long as they lived. And so, and a little goes a long way, even if just like walking 20 minutes a day can make
walking
a huge
is the
difference.
Best thing anyone can do for their bodies.
Yeah,
I will like die on that hill.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to stay active, but it has eaten up a lot of my mental space, and it's one of those things where like I think I will be a good dad, but this whole experience has been remarkably humbling because I don't want to. I don't know if there is any like screwing up or not screwing up or like, I'm trying not to think of it as like I'm gonna, fuck up this child in some way, shape, or form. But
so you're not gonna like go out and buy cigarettes and not come back.
It's not even that. It's just like you say one thing at one time and that kind of influences their worldview forever.
Mm-hmm. You cannot put that kind of pressure on yourself, though.
But that's the thing of like trying to wrap my head around like okay, that and being able to let go of certain things that are not in my power. So, but the thing is, when it comes to stand-up, is like the story that I want to tell has to do with the stuff that I'm living through right now. And it's hard to tell a story when you're in the middle of it.
Of course.
Most stories are best in hindsight. And I'm not an unhinged influencer. You know what I mean when I say unhinged? Like the ones where it's like they're telling the story as it's happening, and each time it gets crazier and crazier. It's like I got to follow this person because they're crazy. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite that type of person, at least right now. So
you're not the person that, and it's funny that this is the example that I think of, but I think this is that type of person telling the story as it's happening. It's the female influencer who's like, you guys have all been asking about my skincare routine, and you're like, who's been asking about it? Who are these people?
Yeah, it's like how much is it 3 where you can technically say all? Yeah. But it's like people keep telling me it's and it's a thing that like presidential candidates do. Throughout history,
they
people,
totally do.
Yeah, it's like people keep asking me about where I'm from. It's like no one gives a shit where you're from.
The fucking hubris.
And it's like you just want to segue into the talking point that you have, but I have little pieces of it kind of figured out, and I still have like stand-up dates on the calendar, so I want to honor those, and I do want to not just do old material. So I'll talk about things as they're happening, but it's that's the thing that I'm working on, and it's I'm trying to write other material that is like a little more ephemeral, but this feels like the most interesting story for me to tell, and I don't know if it's just because I'm like not a good liar, where it's just hard for me to like talk about other things.
Yeah.
It just like reads on my face pretty well.
But also I think a lot of comedians, I mean, this is not a reason to start a family, but part of the weird excitement about it is because you're going to get so much material out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like what's unique about it for me, and maybe it's not that unique, but what feels unique for me is that I'm not the comedian that is the breadwinner for my budding family. Like,
not yet.
Not yet.
Manifest that shit.
Yeah, not currently.
Uh-huh.
I can be.
Yeah.
But currently, it's my girlfriend. So like
So you're gonna breastfeed while she goes back to work.
Right, yeah, I'm gonna pump as hard as I can.
Believe in yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That would be some level of manifesting, for sure. But I'm gonna be, doing a lot of the child rearing at a certain point, and so I gotta figure out like how I want to do my career with this new responsibility that's coming. So that's why I'm trying to like find things that I can do, at home and kind of in my neighborhood that I would be able to do with my baby. And it's
baby daddy podcast.
Yeah, or just figuring out how to like, what, how to make these responsibilities like fun and entertaining, and also normalize that like, being, a stay-at-home dad in some circumstances is okay. It is normal. It is part of the pantheon of human experience in this day and age, and so I do think it's relatable, and I think I didn't try to have a kid to appear more relatable to people,
sure.
But it is a shared experience. So
yeah, ultimately, what's more relatable than family to go up and talk about it, and even as someone that doesn't have kids, I can still really enjoy people's kids material.
Yeah, I mean, I there's times when I get a little like I'm not as like keyed into it, but I think now that I'm experiencing it, it definitely feels more relevant, and I'm interested in what people have to say about it. So yeah, that's been what's on my mind, and so there's times in stand-up where I feel a little forgotten, or I feel a little outside of the stand-up world, at least more so than I used to be. But I'm trying to just be patient and understand that these things can fold back in, and there's a way for me to still tell the story, and I also do need to kick myself in the ass to move forward. So, I just think that I think we have these visions of how the career's supposed to go.
Oh yeah, and it's hard to break that too, because really, I mean, I'm such a control freak, and it's so ironic that I even went into this because there's so little control involved. It's unlike most people's careers where they say, go do A, B, and C, go get this degree, and then you go to law school, and whatever, you get this job, and then you move up. Like, you can do all the things you're supposed to in comedy and check all the boxes, and you're still not guaranteed anything.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that in another career, too.
Yeah, if you're a real fuck-up.
Well, no, it's not even being a fuck-up. I mean, like, there's companies that people work for that are hot for a while, and then they are not hot, and they have to do layoffs.
That's true.
And I can't, I'm struggling to think of a business that is, like, recession-proof.
Sure, there's not many, but I think I mean it in a way of once you get all your credentials.
Oh, yeah.
For the most part, in most businesses, even if that means you have to job hunt or move companies, or starting your own thing obviously has the most risk. But I think you earn the credentials to do a certain type of specialty. For the most part, middle of the bell curve, you get to go do that thing. Versus us, you can work for a decade to become really funny, find your voice on stage. build all this material, and it doesn't mean anyone's gonna give you the space or the opportunities to go and execute.
Yeah, I mean, it's at a certain point, people just want to know what kind of money they can make off of you.
Right.
And I think that's how stand-up is, different and very much the same. Where it's like, hey, can you sell tickets in Dayton? Can you this weekend?
Did you know Dayton is the most average city in America, statistically?
I believe it. I've yet to go to Dayton, so I don't want to prejudge it. But I mean, it seems like one of those stats that makes sense when you say it.
Yeah.
Average how? Just like average size, average, like just on every metric.
Yeah.
Measure a city.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
I think because I'm from Ohio,
yeah.
That's kind of one of those facts that just got embedded in my skull, and I bring it up whenever Dayton gets mentioned. Sure.
Yeah, but like you got to be able to do it consistently, and you got to be able to sell tickets. And right now, it seems to be the way is you got to have this community behind you that's kind of spread around wherever. And even then, I mean, I'm sure plenty of our friends, even if you have the following, our friends have varying degrees of followings, and like, you still have to get those people to show up.
This is true. Yeah, not all. It's scary the way that you need a following now to sell tickets to be able to book stuff. Like that's just what the bar is now for being able to tour if that's what you want to do, and that is what I would like to eventually do. Yeah. If you get a following for something other than stand-up, you're kind of fucked.
Or you have
could
to
be fucked.
You could be. It depends on how people see. You can get a following from stand-up, but if you don't do the type of stand-up people expect when they see you, that also can fuck it. Like,
if you're a crowd work clip person, you better go do crowd work on tour.
Yeah, it can become these sort of gilded handcuffs where that has to be a part of your show. Or if
gilded handcuffs, I like that. I haven't heard it called that before. I've heard it a different way. I like that.
Yeah, or you become known for being a clean comedian because you did a dry bar special where you got big on a network television show like America's Got Talent. And then you swear one time, and then someone is just like, "You were not the person I thought you were." And now, and I think, so it's on the performer and it's on, I guess, their team if they have like a management team to highlight the fact that this performer contains multitudes. And, all of us have like different sides of ourselves that we show in different respects, whether it's, for me, it'd be like, okay, I'm this soon-to-be dad. I'm already a cat dad. I am, I have these interests in soccer and music, and I have a pretty eclectic background. But it's like sometimes it's hard to convey those things to an audience that's already 2 drinks in, in San Diego, and it's like, okay, so like, tell me more about. So you have to figure out how to convey those experiences, and I think it's doable. I want to believe it's doable, and I think
it's doable. It's been done. I can sit here and rattle off examples.
Yeah, but I think it requires you kind of got to. I feel like we need to beat people over the head with it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, there's this, and there's also this.
Well, it's like Rogan talking about aliens every chance he gets, but bow hunting also, but MMA also. Like, right. You do get to be a multifaceted person, even if those things hypothetically make no sense. Because I look at what I enjoy, and it's like dogs and surfing and EDM, and I wonder sometimes, I'm like, can I be this one person with all these things? And maybe my people that like me because I like surfing are not going to give a shit about comedy or about the other stuff, but I don't want to mute myself either.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't imagine people like stopping from following someone online because they showed one side of themselves. It's like not remotely contradictory. Like if you were advertising yourself as like a dog person, and then all of a sudden there's just like signs that there's no dogs around in your life, and all of a sudden you become, a ferret lady or whatever. Like I think that would maybe throw people for a bit, and it might be confusing. But like if your dog's in your life, you surf from time to time, you go to these music festivals, and then you do stand up. I think there's enough people in this world that presents kind of like an ethos that people can live by. Is like I think all those things kind of coalesce into like a pretty shared experience. I can think of a lot of people that love all those things.
Yeah, hopefully, because
or at least two.
Yeah, part of the problem is the internet culture is so go niche down, right? And I'm like, I can't niche because I don't want to then get stuck doing that fucking niche forever. What you were saying, gilded handcuffs, yeah. Where we've seen, I think we can both think of examples of people who niche down really hard. They got really successful at their weird singular niche, and now they have to go perform that niche forever. And it's like, yeah, they're doing well, but are they going to want to keep doing that same character for the next 50 years?
Yeah, or even is that character something I want to hear for an hour?
Yeah.
I've thought about that too, where it's, if I'm at a club where I'm seeing showcase sets where it's like, this character is great to do for 10 minutes. Or, maybe even 15, but it's like, do I want to hear 45 minutes of this specific character? For me, I'm not the one buying the tickets, so it's possible I might just be in the minority. But a show, a stage show needs to have some layers to it, and it needs to have like some flow, some up and some down, and it's not going to be high octane funny the whole time. For the most part, you got to give people, even if you're the funniest person in the world, you got to give people a chance to breathe. So I'm just trying to be patient, and I'm trying to keep the focus on myself, because when I do get caught up in other people's business, that is kind of when I feel the worst.
Yeah, you're not going to have time for other people's business once you have a kid.
Yeah, I'm trying to see that as a blessing. I don't want to be, fully.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I always
just digging. He's trying to put a hole in the couch.
Yeah, it's when people get mad at like their pets for doing these kinds of things. Like I appreciate you being patient with your dog, but like because I
the audio engineer in me that's gonna have to edit this is like, oh, I hope the mics aren't picking up him trying to bury something in the couch.
Right. It's like, but it is the dog being a dog.
Correct.
And I do the same thing because I'm around a lot of like dog people, being a cat dad, but
you're obviously very pro dog.
I have no problem with dogs. I think dogs are great, and they just don't work for the lifestyle I live right now. And my girlfriend is clearly a dog person, and all of her family is kind of that way, and some of them just don't know how to like behave around cats and how.
Do you feel some pressure around that, around being a cat person in a now a dog family?
No, I've given up on trying to like, I'm doing it more and more in stand up, but I've given up in real life on like how to like change myself for other people. It's like, oh, these are the things I like.
Oh, that's really good growth.
And I just tell them, it's like, hey, if you do that, cat's not gonna like it. And yeah, she's got a 4-year-old nephew who like they were around for the holidays, and he like jumped really, like did a big sort of jump in front of the cat, and the cat hissed at him, and he's like, the cat hissed at me. And I was like, yeah, that's what happens when you do that. If you make a bunch of sudden movements around her, she's not going to enjoy it.
I think this is material fact. Cats were domesticated like 20,000 years after dogs. They're just not at that level of comfort yet with humans. Obviously it varies between cats, but... Yeah,
and I think each one has its own temperament, and each dog has its own temperament, and so you got to just be okay with the fact that some dogs are just not going to want to like sit on your lap all the time, and people. I think my goal is to teach people like, hey, the cat's not going to do dog things. And it's wild that that is something that I need to keep telling people, but it's like you can want this animal to be different, but they don't speak English or hear English that well, so like they're not going to change for you.
Yeah.
They have these patterns, and you can lock into those, or you can try to force something else.
I mean, that's the kind of wisdom that's applicable to people too. We can't control anyone. So.
Yeah, we can show them things,
mm-hmm.
and maybe they'll, be influenced to consider something else outside their worldview.
I like that. On that, well, kind of related to that,
mm-hmm.
What's your take as a man who's not toxic, and don't get canceled later and make me put my foot in my mouth when I'm saying this about
I'll do my absolute best.
I just love to hear men's takes on this whole like manosphere shit that's going on right now, and
like why it exists.
I don't know. I guess I understand. I think it's easy to conceptualize why it exists, but how are we supposed to fix it, and how are we supposed to handle these types of guys?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's some ways to approach it. I think there would have to be some sort of, how like countries will create like an embargo against another country.
I already like where this is going.
I think there has to be like a societal embargo on certain types of behavior, and the hard thing is that you can, as a society, choose to not accept any one person's behavior, whereas like nope, it's not okay, and then kind of like walk away from it. Kind of like the way our parents would suggest we solve like playground disputes, where it's like no thank you, that doesn't work for me, and walk away. But the problem is like in certain circumstances, a man is going to be physically more powerful or domineering over either a more diminutive man or a lot of women, and that is scary. And I'm never going to fully understand that, but I think the way the pendulum swings, I think there is a chance for it to swing back towards a level of like living with integrity and just general thinking outside of oneself. Because when I see people promoting some kind of toxic behavior, and it can be a lot of different things, where it's I'm sorry, I wish I don't have something like fully distilled, but I'm sure you will edit this down. But like there's what I can see is the pendulum swinging towards some level of like honorable living, but I think it would require there to be certain sort of pillars of masculinity to be kind of like pushing that. And I think we are definitely veering away from certain aspects of toxic masculinity, like pickup artist kind of
I hope
choices.
So.
I'm sure there's still people who will try that, and I mean, I think America is always going to, at least for now, lead the charge in terms of like what's okay behavior and what's not okay. Because as toxic as some American men may be, I do think it is worse in other places where
it definitely is.
The cultural expectations of men and women are different, and it is much more patriarchal.
Yeah. What do you think is like healthy masculinity?
I think healthy masculinity would have to start from not having like a clear metric around needing to be like a certain body type or a certain level of like interest in certain activities. I think masculinity, like femininity, comes from just confidence and acceptance in who you are.
I like that. That can apply to anybody.
Because when you know, and I think what's showing me that are people who are non-binary and trans. At least that's what I'm learning from them, because those people are clearly not happy or confident in the body that they were, or that they were living in at the time. And some of them, through no modification to their body apart from just the way they want to be received, the way they want to be addressed, just saying, I want a slight name change. I want to just use different pronouns because I feel boxed in to this current set of pronouns, this current way of being viewed, and I need that view to be opened up. And now I feel so much more comfortable. So, and I've watched people become so much more confident in themselves because they don't feel restricted. And I think what I notice out of like toxic masculinity, and I guess to some extent toxic femininity, is these people who feel forced to live a certain way, where and when you ask them why, to they're exhibiting these behaviors and why they think these things are important. There's like, that's just what a man does. That's just what a woman does. This is where a man's place is. This is where a woman's place is. And I think we need to realize that all that shit is made up. You know, it's just something your parents told you, your community told you, your religious leader told you, maybe a politician told you, or something you saw on TV, and you're like, oh, that's what this is. And it's made up. Every written work by people is made up by somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that about like a scientific text or like something where that was based on observable fact. Like, someone can say what they observed, and if they can, create a logical argument that shows that like this led to this, which led to this, and that's why this exists. Okay.
And when it sounds good, it's so tempting.
I mean, and a lot of it is, I think a lot of what people choose to say about manhood or womanhood is based on this sort of like confirmation bias, where it's like I'm just trying to create a worldview that fits either a world that I want to live in or a world that I currently live in and feel comfortable in and don't want to venture out of.
Yeah, and make it make sense.
Mm-hmm. And I think the hard thing for a lot of people to realize is that there's plenty of things in this world that don't make a lot of sense. And it's either because it's just a hard concept to grasp for anybody, or because some of us are just not that smart in one subject or another.
It's tough to bump up against someone that just lacks capacity, right? That can't understand something, even if you dumb it down and explain it like they're a third grader.
Mm-hmm.
And then they still won't get it. And I just like talking about it so much because I feel like it comes up so much. Like I was at an open mic the other day.
Oh, perfect place to see toxic behavior in the wild.
Oh, and did I?
You can put the David Attenborough narration over that. It's like, watch as the man invades the woman's space. Majestic.
This was male on male crime, actually, that I was witnessing at this open mic, where it was this guy who was very clearly super new to comedy, got up. The first bit that he did was about how rapey the "Baby It's Cold Outside" song is, which it's like
not a new idea, but
no, not at all.
But I mean, sure, there's something to that.
Yeah, so it goes from that, and it's already like, oh, I feel like if you knew what was going on, you wouldn't. Anyone who's been doing comedy for a while probably wouldn't even approach that premise because.
Well, I mean, it's a good lesson in like, hey, maybe look up to see if someone's talked about this before.
Yeah.
Just like type in some keywords into YouTube.
Give it again.
Baby, it's cold outside jokes. Justin Martindale has a fantastic one about it.
Oh yeah.
But I saw it 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
It was great fun.
But here's where it gets worse.
Yeah.
So he goes from that to then try to do a bit about how it's impossible for men to get raped because they get boners, and that means it's not rape. And boy, did the room lose their fucking mind.
Right.
As long as I've been doing this, I can't remember many other times where someone started to say a premise and people were literally going, no, don't. Like, many people. The bartender was like, stop, no, don't. And it was rightfully so. He got berated after. As soon as he got off stage, he got berated, and then he went to, like, apologize because he'd offended a bunch of people, and there were men there that had experienced sexual assault.
Yeah.
It was just so chaotic to see that, and I kept thinking, I'm like, what is the way to handle this? Because I'm such a subscriber to Brene Brown teachings where we can't shame people into the correct behavior, and what's like a way to make it an educational moment without, I guess, shaming that person and telling them how wrong and awful they are, but also still telling them how wrong and awful they are, because I think trying to say that men can't be victimized is not the fucking answer. Like, that's not true. That's just going to make the divide worse.
Yeah. So in my experience, what I'm noticing from that story are like a few things. So I just want to address those first and then I can kind of share with my experience around it. Like, I think it's a few things. It's, for one, comedy is hard. And two, do your research, which we talked about. Three, I think part of what the toxic masculinity space or the manosphere space is like, people see that when they get like a negative response, sometimes if it's online and it feels like a distant person, like a faceless, nameless person who's just saying a negative comment, which drives engagement.
Sure does.
And I think that does perpetuate these kinds of toxic behaviors. They'll see it as just, oh, these people are my haters. And it's like, no, you just said you said a thing, and you said it with a certain level of intention, and then people recognize that intention, and they responded with their own intentions. That's how language works. It's called intentionality. It's a thing I learned in school because I studied linguistics, and I felt it was a way for me to academically study comedy.
Oh, I like that.
I was able. What's cool about language is that I get to open up a hole in my face, and I can utter what to most species on this earth, including this one, consider dissonant noise. And then you, through holes in the side of your face, can register not just what I'm saying, but the intentions behind it, and recognize that I use those intentions as a way of conveying that information. And you can respond in kind. It's really cool. And it was taught to me by this guy, Professor John Searle. He's a philosopher, and I don't remember if he's still alive because it was years ago that I learned this concept. And I think he was also, berated for doing toxic behavior in his own right later on. So it can happen to anybody.
Like any good professor.
Like any good professor. He taught me this, but he taught me this interesting piece of information, and I associate that with comedy, where it's like, if I want to make the audience feel a certain way, I have to say things a certain way, and that's, I'm sure, what these manosphere influencers will do as well. It's what these true crime girlies will also do with their respective podcasts and platforms. Is like, they have to say things a certain way to get people hooked in. And then they reveal their true intentions, and then you have to decide whether you're still on board. With a joke, you get to reveal your true intentions with the punchline, and that kind of switches things and hopefully yields that laughter that we're coveting. So what I do when I work with students that I tutor, when they do something that doesn't go right, either they make a mistake on a test and they get a low grade, or they just get a question wrong, or they try to do all the math in their head when I tell them over and over, do it on the fucking page. Because you don't got it like that. If you had it like that, I wouldn't be here.
So you turn into a sassy black woman when you're tutoring?
Pretty much, yeah. I do a little bit of appropriation, and that's on me. No, but like, I have, I tell them, is like, hey, I see that you're trying to flex by doing the math in your head, and it's not happening. There's no one to flex for.
Yeah.
It's just you and me.
Yeah.
So do it on the page. I'd rather you get it right and do it this way than do it the way you think you should be doing it and get it wrong. And
I like this. I like this a lot. This is very effective.
Yeah, and I tell all my students, like, if there was a shortcut, I would tell you. I don't want to do more of this work than I have to either.
I've been in their position so much because I used to want to, I don't know why I had so much resentment around writing things down.
Like jokes or joke ideas?
No, I'm very...
Or just in school?
In school.
Oh, yeah.
As an adult, I'm super into writing things. I make lists. I get a dopamine hit off of crossing things out on that list. Like, I'll write things down that don't need to be written down just so I can get my reward system up and running. But as a kid, I remember the show your work era and me, for some reason, being very resistant about it.
Yeah. And I remind, like, there's some students that I help prep for standardized tests where you don't need to show your work because it's not part of your grade, but like if you show the work, you'll be more likely to get the question right. And I don't swear at my students or anything like that. I as much as I would like to sometimes, but
that's for college.
Yeah, but I mean, I have to. What I'm kind of showing them is that there is a right way to do this. There is a way to do this that has a greater guarantee of success. It is sometimes slower. It is not flashy, and it is not. It's not cool.
Why does it feel so uncool to show your work?
I think it's because it takes away the magic.
There's something psychological going on there.
It takes away the cinematic genius element of it, where they want to be like Eddie Redmayne's Stephen Hawking character at the beginning of the movie, before he, starts withering away. They want to seem like the cool kid who just has it in their head, and it's like, and in show business, that magic matters to people. The people who are able to just kind of make it seem like they're riffing off the dome, and they've got these great lines that are not just funny, but they feel profound. And Gerard Carmichael was and probably still is one of the best at doing that. Now, I haven't peeked behind the curtain too much with Gerard because we're not close like that. But I would watch him when I was working at the Comedy Store, and I'd see him at other shows, and he had that skill, and I think that's why people find him so magical to watch on stage, whether you're a fan of him or not. Mm-hmm. But in show business, there's a premium on that, and if you kind of show that there's maybe not, if you demystify some of that, then people all of a sudden are less interested in you, and you're not that exciting to follow. So with the manosphere things, when you deal with someone like an Andrew Tate, or you deal with someone of that ilk, he would just have this ethos that was just sort of oozing out of him. The tight pants and the casino life, the cigar smoking, women should be doing this, men should be doing that. Anything outside of this is like, insert slur here. And then we find out that he was trafficking women. So, there's the
behind the curtain.
Yeah, there's the work he's showing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, this is what it takes for you to live that lifestyle that you claim is so accessible. And it's like, yeah, I guess if I wanted to live in Romania and didn't respect the value of other human life, then yeah, I suppose I could live that life too. and that's eventually what we realize it takes. So, it is not. It's rarely cool to live a reasonable, honorable life, or a life that you can, I guess, hang your hat on. But a lot of people live it. A lot of people are reasonable. I mean, when I do shows and I go talk to people out in the world, most people are living pretty honorable lives. They might have a few flaws, and hopefully some of them are aware of it and they're working on it. But it's hard. I hope
so, yeah.
And it's because we're flawed. And I think we want to see a Superman, a Superwoman, a super they, whatever. we want to see someone living this idealized lifestyle, these aspirational lifestyles, and that's why we follow them. And you can curate one if you want to, but it takes a lot of work, and it will come at a price of other things.
I'd rather find a way to succeed in the middle, because I do think most people are there. I think it's just the people in the middle are not as loud as the people on the extreme ends.
Yeah.
And that's why there's this misconception that you have to be on an extreme end to be super successful. Meanwhile, I'm like, no, I swear most people are in the middle. I swear.
Yeah, no, I love it when I see someone on YouTube, really yelling at, like, this is how you talk to women. It's like, how old are you? And it's like, it's already a bad start. Because it's like, now if this person was saying, this is how I talk to women, and it's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. It's like, now we know where you're coming from, and we have an idea of like where we at least have a starting point. When I took mushrooms for the first time,
great beginning to any story.
Started after a few hours of like, laughing and crying at the same time and melting into my beanbag chair and dancing very freely to a nature documentary. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pull out my phone and just take a look at social media just to see what this feels like.
Oh, a phone on shrooms. Oh no.
Well, and I was only on the phone for about 4 minutes, because what I noticed was it was a bunch of people just screaming for attention. Kind of like when a mama bird comes back to the nest with some food and the baby birds are all going up like this. Just like, baby, like, please, see me. And that's kind of what every post I scroll through felt like. Everyone's just like dying for attention. And so I try to remember that when I, post something or see someone else's post, is just asking to be seen. And I gotta think that the pendulum can swing back to a level of like reasonability. I don't know if it's gonna happen soon. And
it might not happen in our lifetime.
It might not. I don't know how. I mean, I don't know what kind of pendulum we're working with, but I mean, on a mass scale, it feels like a lot of chaos right now. But when I talk to individual people, most people seem really reasonable.
That's how I feel.
So I try to remember that, but I don't know how you build like a small business around, like a social media influencer business around that. I'm trying to figure it out for me.
Yeah.
Just like how can I be reasonable about it and share those thoughts. But I do think if ever there was a challenge, that one is worth fighting for, and maybe it might require some sort of like sensationalist hooks that lead into a reasoned point.
We have to bamboozle people into logic.
You might have to.
Yeah.
You might have to hoodwink.
Well, with attention spans these days, I think you do.
You might have to hoodwink them a little bit.
Yeah.
So, But yeah, it is challenging for sure. And I think I wouldn't I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these people in the manosphere space just don't have like. I'd be interested to see who their male role models are, like who they grew up around. I think the hard thing for us to understand as well that I think it is getting better with each successive generation, on the whole. But kind of like what is it, like the wheels of justice bend towards truth or something like that. Mm-hmm. But change is really slow.
It is. I got this criticism about this podcast that it was very male hating.
Male hating? Was there evidence for that, or?
No, and you know what? Initially, when I got the feedback, I was so busy being like, "Oh my god, you listen to my podcast? Thank you." I was so excited about the listening.
I think that's good to keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
Was the criticism from someone you knew?
Yes.
Okay.
But not well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because I've had criticism in the past. I got some, criticism on my special, and I was just trying to, comb through comments and I only respond really to positive ones or ones that are at least kind of ambiguous, because I don't, I do want to engage, but I also want to reward people for positive engagement and doing what I have control over. And, there was a part of me that wanted to just say, hey, thanks for watching. And I think I remember responding to a negative comment. I was like, hey, you're actually helping me out. Mm-hmm. Just kind of calling it out, and then they ended up deleting their comments. I was like, okay,
I've done that too. I've been like, thanks for the engagement.
Yeah, at least you help, at least you know the game now. Mm-hmm. Maybe you'll think twice before you respond negatively, because you're actually helping that person out. But yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I say particularly sensationalist stuff. I mean, I have my views, and I think they're coming from a good place, and I think I have some funny stuff to say about it. But like, yeah, I mean, how much did that criticism mean to you?
Not much, because I know my intentions and that I've never sat here and straight up shit on men. That's not really my thing. The criticisms that I've brought to the table have been about specific men with specific behaviors that very much deserved the criticism that they received. Yeah. And then as I was explaining that, the person that told me this tried to backpedal and be like, oh, well, I'm just very contrarian. To which I say, what a shitty position to take, because if you're a contrarian, that means you don't have any opinions of your own. You're just waiting to hear someone else's opinion on something so that you can say the contrary.
Yeah, you're defining yourself on what you're not, I guess, or what other, yeah.
Yeah, but it's
there's no foundation.
No, none at all. Exactly. It's like, why are you... So all your opinions depend on other people's opinions?
Yeah, and it's also hard to have like a good faith conversation about what you're...
Anything with someone that's a contrarian.
Yeah, let alone something that you are, like a project. Yeah, I think, I think, there also has to be an emphasis on having a nuanced conversation. And I don't think the internet really rewards nuanced conversations.
No, I don't think so either.
Because they're hard. It's, it's not something that you can put together in a soundbite. It is something that requires some more measured thinking. And it requires someone to listen for a little longer to get the full intention behind what is being said. It's easy to say things, it's easy to say some wild shit. But I think what a lot of these people don't realize is that they're playing a short game. I think a lot of people, if they have like a business mindset and they're not really like too tied to their morals, they might be trying to cash in on a certain type of behavior that clearly generates revenue for people, because that's what the business model is. And some people say, well, you just got to adjust with the times. And it's like, maybe. But think there's a way to develop positive engagement, and there are some people who do things that develop positive engagement that get a lot of, and I'm sure generates them a lot of revenue. To bring it back to people who own round animals,
right?
Because a lot of the comments I'm sure are like, "Oh, what a muffin! This cat is so cute. This dog is so precious. I love, who you insert round animal that you love."
Mm-hmm.
The number of round animals I love that are also like no longer living, by the way, is insane. Because that's a short game as well.
Yeah. Well, how quickly did people stop talking about Mudang? Because at the end of the day, Mudang is going to grow up and be murderous and not so cute.
Yeah, I mean Yeah, I think people do try to capitalize on certain things when they have the chance, and that is what this American system rewards, and that's what this internet age also rewards. So, there's a part of me is like, I understand you want to get your money, but you got to live with this.
Yeah, that's always been a blockade for me in a way that I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like happy with the decisions I've made and the path that I'm on. But there's been so many times where I've just thought, oh, if I could only be one of those women that was comfortable, like kind of being like a call girl or an escort and going out with these old guys that would just give me money, and oh, what an easy way to get money. But then it's like I can't put myself in that situation and then be okay with that money because of how I got it. And yet I'm like, are these ethics hurting me? Are they slowing me down? They are slowing me down.
I mean that kind of life is also rife with danger.
It's super rife with danger for sure. And then you have to explain that eventually, because a thing that always stops me is like, oh well, the kind of partnership I would want to have, the guy I'd want to be with, would hopefully negatively judge that kind of behavior, because I kind of do, I suppose.
Sure, I think. Yeah, I mean, we do have to make peace with our choices, and some people just are not at a place where they can do that, and maybe they will later, and maybe they'll, recant or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think what this business requires, regardless of what people choose to do, is it does require persistence, and in order to have a career with some longevity, you either need to be putting out the same thing over and over again, or either like a certain type of joke or a certain type of worldview over and over, and figuring out different ways to package it, or you got to keep pivoting and trying different things until something sticks, or until people kind of get the whole breadth of your personhood and can glom onto that. And I think if any of us can continue to put out good work, I think it adds up, because like all those experiences equate to wisdom. And we either become, equipped to make a project that people resonate with on a larger scale, or people resonate with just enough to eke out a living. And, I'm trying to be okay with either of those things. I mean, there's a part of me that, wants the world domination, because that's just what's been peddled to me.
Right.
And, I have a fluffy animal that I can pet and make people laugh to. Like I can, oh, Monty's not into that. Please, save me, mother. I can do, all I can do is like focus on what I have the power to make changes with. And most of that is like, the level of work and the level of commitment to that work I have. So, after that, a lot of it's not up to me. So,
yeah. Are you good at letting go?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, I think putting out the special was a good exercise in like understanding that, this is going to reach a certain number of people, and I hope people could, do watch it and continue to watch it. But I was working with certain types of resources, and I was not working with like a large company at the helm, in charge of like advertising. And even then, it's hard to say what the what the reception would have been in that situation.
Did you have to overcome like a fear of asking for things because you were crowdfunding and stuff like that? I know a lot of people get caught up. Like, I would be nervous as hell to put myself out there asking for money for a project, just asking for things has always been an issue for me, like a hyper-dependence brained person trying to go out and be vulnerable and put myself up for, and it's such a part of any entrepreneurial journey. What'd you do to get over that? Like, how'd you put yourself out there?
I think I had read enough literature or listened to enough audio about that kind of thing where I was like, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable, but it needs to be done anyway. And that's kind of how it's an extension of the letting go I've had around like figuring out how to compartmentalize nerves for just performing on stage. Like, they're always there. I just know where to put it. And the way when people ask me, like, am I nervous to be on stage? I have to say, like, yeah, but once my name is called, there's nothing else to do but go do it. And so once I realize, okay, I've done all the cost-benefit analysis I can with any decision, it's like, this just has to be done. Then it makes it a little bit, it just moves the wheels a little bit more. And also, I've recognized that I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. As much as I have wanted to believe I did at different points. So.
What do you know? What's a thing where you're like, oh, I can't wait to pass this on to my child, or this is like a strength? What's a thing where you're like, I know I'm really good at this?
I'm really good at building any like children's toy.
Okay.
Like, I had to do that.
So you're an elf.
Pretty much. Like, any Lego, any like race car track kind of thing, any like Barbie mystery house kind of thing, I know how to. It's just following the directions, but like, I've built enough IKEA furniture and I have like an extensive CV and Lego building from my own childhood that like, I'm solid at that. Like, I was at my girlfriend's parents' house, and I had to leave the next morning to come back to LA, but they were going to be having my girlfriend's nephew over and having him for the day, and they wanted to have one of his toys already built so that when he came over, he could just play with it, because it was a little too. It's fun for him to play with, but he was like a little too old for him in terms of cognition for him to build it himself. Even though it could have been an interesting exercise to try to do that, and just see like what are your actual limits. But they said, like, could you build it? And it's like, I will build it in 7 minutes, and I did it in 6. Like, I have the utmost confidence. Children's toys, I am stupendous at doing that, and like, anything up to any math that's before calculus I can do. Any, like, I can help with a lot of science, like all the stuff I tutor. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty excellent at that.
That actually makes perfect sense with what you were saying. This is why you're the perfect person to teach kids to show their work, because you're okay with directions. You're not trying to go rogue when you're building stuff.
Yeah, I've never understood the ego around it. It's like there's directions for a reason. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
I know, but people try to, and I've unfortunately been guilty of doing this myself, where I've just glazed over directions, and then all of a sudden, oh, the brackets on this drawer on my dresser are backwards because I just got a little too brazen.
Yeah. Some of us have to learn the measure twice, cut once lesson a lot.
Oh my god, I can't stop learning that. I actually hung this thing up here wrong. The first time I put the hole in the wall, I should have measured, and I didn't, and the things were hanging all the way down here, and I was like, that's not high enough, and so there's lots of second holes whenever I'm decorating. I don't get it. I still haven't. I'm in my 30s. I should have learned this by now.
Now, some things don't come with great directions, especially the things that are ordered off of places like Amazon or Temu or And so, like, if there aren't directions and you gotta wing it, then yeah, you might have to do some trial and error.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my just overinflated ego being like, no, I'm just gonna build this how I think I should build it.
I've never. I always thought the directions were there for a reason, and it's like I think I just maybe that ego is for me isn't overshadowed by my obsession with doing things right, and I want to do things right the first time because I don't want to have to deal with this shit again. Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I mean we'll probably get a lot of hand-me-down toys from family because there's some.
Some
my
other
parents
babies around.
Yeah, my parents held on to some stuff, and there's some older babies.
There's older babies. Most people call them toddlers, but I like older babies.
Yeah, I call old babies adults.
We're all old babies.
Yeah, I think that would be a really humbling way to look at it. To, answer some of the questions that now that I think about it, it's like if we just called everyone an old baby. I think it would really take a lot of people who thought they had status down a peg, and I think would make people a lot funnier. It's almost like it's a new version of like picturing people in their underwear. Mm-hmm. It's like no, if you see everyone as an old baby, I think that really makes the world a much more fun and humbling place to live in. It's like look at that old baby trying to build a chair.
He's not trying to be a pickup artist. He's not engaging in toxic masculinity. He's just an old baby who's lost his way and needs his diaper changed.
Yeah, he just wants some woman to hold him. Because his mom, an even older baby, is too old to hold him the way he wants to be held.
We are getting to the bottom of things.
I think so. I think we might have stumbled on something nice.
Do you have any role models that are publicly known or any favorite books or anything like that? What's been something that's been like a teacher for you?
Oh, a publicly known, like someone outside like my family?
Yeah, or just even if it's art related, I don't know. What's something that you're like, oh, this being in the world has helped me be a better person?
I think I've read a couple, or I don't read a lot of books. I listen to them because I drive so much and I get easily distracted. But there was, I've listened to a couple books on Stoicism that kind of like put together some of like behaviors that I have found that worked for me and kind of categorized them under a certain umbrella term where it's like, hey, it kind of centers around like patience and not getting too caught up in, like, not letting feelings take me away from approaching something rationally.
Stoicism's good.
Yeah, and Ryan Holiday is a good author about that. He's written tons of books.
I was going to ask if you're going the Ryan Holiday way or if you're going to where he's going with, because he just, like, quotes Marcus Aurelius, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there was a Marcus Aurelius quote that I knew about in high school. That was like, the universe is just transformation. Our lives are what our thoughts make it. So if you are someone who's into manifesting, listen, Marcus Aurelius is right there with you. The other thing that really kind of just unlocked some thoughts in my brain, because I'm trying to, create a home environment that's not just conducive for a baby, but also conducive for, my girlfriend and my cat and me, is this concept of hygge, which is a Danish concept and like a Scandinavian concept. It basically means coziness.
Oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, so I thought that my behaviors, which were just, like, I had trouble categorizing it and giving it like lumping it all together, because like I go out and I do stand up, but I tutor kids, but I also really value, like, other than that, I don't really like going out a whole lot. Like, it's not just because my work is going out, it's because I don't really do well in groups of more than 6. Mm-hmm. Like, I can do a dinner party.
Yeah.
I can, people come over for dinner, I go over with my girlfriend to someone's house for dinner, and, we have a nice time, we can really connect. I can do one-on-one, and I can do one on 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
And so what I noticed through this book called The Little Book of Hygge, and it's Hygge, it's this Danish term, it kind of described this idea of coziness, of like, creating an environment with a lot of mixed textiles. Like, I'm a really tactile person, and if something doesn't feel right,
mm-hmm.
I find it kind of repulsive. So if I'm like, when I go into clothing stores, I have to feel everything in order for me to even be remotely interested in it.
I'm that way too.
So it's the tactile. It's having like low lighting with candles, and it's having the fireplace going. It's having
overhead light is the enemy.
Yeah, it's as much as I love going into Ralph's or any supermarket for grocery shopping, like it's not a great showcase of the food. Like it's kind of a rough environment to see the food, or like going into a big department store is kind of a nightmare. It's like, but it's kind of creating, like, I've always had a penchant for sweets, and I have always had I've always been an avid tea drinker, and all these things kind of fall under this realm of coziness and creating an environment that is cozy. And I love it. I love an apartment that feels lived in. I don't like an apartment that looks like it's being staged for a potential new tenant. I don't like I don't like something that looks like a furniture showroom. Like, I like something that looks like it has character. And where we are, clearly has that character. You've got some lovely plants, and you've got some, books that matter to you, and figuring like all this.
I tried.
All this feels like it's you, and I think most people do have that. But like, when I realized that this is a cultural thing in places like Denmark, where I have cultural lineage, it kind of made it feel like, oh, this is just in my bones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't live a life that is centered around, like, posturing. I want to live a life that's like, what you see is what you get. I'm not trying to impress people, because what I'm trying to demonstrate through my actions and my words is that I am impressive just by virtue of who I am.
You're an authentic old baby.
An authentic old baby.
Stuart Thompson, this has been such a delight. Where can people find you?
I'm on social media at Stuart B. Thompson. It's Stuart. And I have a website that has everything you could possibly want to find about me. It's StuartThompsonComedy.com.
Is your special on there?
Yeah, my special's on there. Special's on YouTube, so it's totally free for anyone to enjoy. It's called Conditional Love. It's sort of the amalgamation of about 10 to 12 years of my work, and I would love for anyone to watch it. It's great, and it's also like not too dirty. Like, I say some swear words, but I have this kind of face where it's like, oh, he means well. But it's shot at the Punchline Comedy Club in San Francisco, which is one of my home clubs, and it looks like a movie. So I hope people enjoy it. And there's some other cool stuff on my website that people can enjoy. But yeah, come see a show. I've got my calendar on there. I do a semi-regular and Friends show at the Hollywood Improv Lab. The next one's on, I don't know when this is coming out, but the next one's on January 19th at 7 p.m. So come hang. It'll be a fun show.
Perfect. This will be out before that, and I'll link everything in the description and all of that. And thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye.